I was always the afterthought, the quiet companion in a bustling life, the one who faded into the background. Mark, my partner, was everything anyone could want. Handsome, successful, kind. At least when he wanted to be. On paper, we had it all. But something was missing. Something I couldn't quite put into words until I finally realized it wasn't just missing. It was never there to begin with. It started with the little things, the forgotten anniversaries, the missed phone calls, the empty promises of, "I'm busy, but I'll make it up to you." I told myself it was just a phase, that work was overwhelming him, that love would eventually shine through. But as days turned into weeks, then months, I began to feel like a stranger in my own home. Mark's presence was a shadow in the house. We sat across from each other at the dinner table, speaking of nothing more than trivialities. "How was your day?" "Fine." "How's work?" "Busy." His eyes were always somewhere else, and when I looked at him, I wondered if he even saw me anymore. I started questioning myself. Was it me? Had I become invisible in his life? There were moments I tried to get through to him, gentle touches, heartfelt words, even asking him outright what was wrong. But nothing changed. His response was always the same. A hollow apology and a promise to do better. A promise he'd never keep. Then one night, after another silent dinner and another night spent alone in a marriage that felt more like a partnership of convenience, I finally asked myself, why am I still here? The truth hit me hard. I wasn't living, I was surviving. And I had spent too much of my life waiting for someone to notice. It was then that I realized, if love was supposed to make me feel alive, then this wasn't love anymore. It was just a memory of it. But just as I began to accept this harsh truth, something unexpected happened. Someone new came into my life, someone who looked at me the way Mark hadn't in years. And for the first time in a long time, I wondered if I had been looking in the wrong direction all along. This was just the beginning, and I didn't know it yet, but it would change everything. There's a kind of silence that doesn't just surround you, it lives in you. I woke up next to Mark every morning, yet I felt miles away from him. We didn't fight. That would have meant there was still something left to fight for. No, our love didn't end in fire. It withered in silence. I remember standing in front of the mirror one morning, putting on a pale pink blouse. Mark passed by without even glancing. No compliment, no, "You look beautiful," nothing. Just the sound of the door closing behind him. And it broke something in me that had been cracking for years. At work, I'd smile, laugh, pretend. People thought I had the perfect life, a stable relationship, a great apartment, a man who provided. But no one knew that my soul was starving. I hadn't been touched with love in years. Not truly, not intentionally. One evening, I sat on the balcony alone, wine glass in hand, city lights flickering like tiny lies. That's when I cried. Not because he hurt me, but because I had let myself shrink for him. I had dimmed every part of me just to fit into a space he didn't even look at anymore. And just when I thought I'd lost all of me, I met Ethan, a stranger, a passerby. He asked if I was okay as I wiped tears on a rainy sidewalk. And for the first time in years, someone actually waited for my answer. I didn't know it then, but that small question would shatter my world and rebuild it all over again. I didn't expect to see him again. Ethan. But fate, it seems, has a strange way of showing up when you're barely holding yourself together. I was rushing out of a cafe, coffee in one hand, deadlines in the other, when I bumped into him. "You again?" he smiled, brushing coffee off his jacket. I apologized, embarrassed, but he just laughed and said, "You still cry on sidewalks?" I looked at him, stunned. He remembered. We ended up walking, talking, about little things, books, music, life. But in his voice, there was a calm I hadn't known in years. He didn't try to impress me. He noticed me, and somehow that meant everything. That night, I went home to Mark. He was there, as always, typing away, headphones on, locked in his world. I stood in the doorway for 5 minutes. He didn't look up once. So I said nothing, just walked past him like a ghost in my own home. I laid in bed, eyes open, thinking of Ethan's laugh, the way he asked real questions, the way he listened without checking his phone. And for the first time in a long time, I wondered, is this what it feels like to be wanted, even just as a person? Mark and I had stopped talking long ago, but with Ethan, even silence felt full. That night, my heart whispered something I didn't want to admit. I felt more seen by a stranger in an hour than by the man I loved for 5 years. The next few days felt like a blur, as though I were floating between two worlds. One was the life I had built with Mark, predictable, quiet, and suffocating. The other was Ethan's world, raw, unfiltered, where conversations didn't feel like performances. I found myself thinking about him constantly, replaying our moments in my head like a secret I couldn't quite keep. One evening, as I sat on the balcony, the cool breeze against my skin, I thought about the life I had with Mark. It was comfortable, safe, and familiar. But familiarity wasn't enough anymore. I needed something real, something alive. I didn't expect this from myself, but I couldn't ignore it any longer. Ethan had shown me what it meant to be seen, to be more than just a partner, more than just someone to fill space. He made me feel like I was worth fighting for. So I made a decision. I couldn't keep pretending. I couldn't stay in a relationship that had withered away while I was too afraid to look at the truth. The next day, I came home to find Mark sitting on the couch, watching TV like he always did. His eyes barely lifted from the screen when I entered. I stood there for a moment, heart pounding in my chest. I was about to shatter a life we'd built together, but the more I looked at him, the more I realized that it wasn't his life anymore. It was mine. "Mark," I said, voice steady but shaking inside. "I can't do this anymore." He glanced up, surprise in his eyes. "What do you mean?" Us. I'm not happy. You're not happy. I can't keep pretending that everything is fine." The words felt like they weighed a ton, but as they left my lips, I felt lighter. For the first time in years, I felt like I was finally breathing. Mark didn't respond, just stared at me blankly. And in that moment, I realized that sometimes leaving isn't just about walking away from someone. It's about walking towards something better, something real. And for the first time in forever, I felt alive again. It's funny how much you can change in just a few days, how quickly the heart can heal when you let it. The days after I walked away from Mark were filled with uncertainty, but also freedom. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know if I was ready to move on, or if I was even allowed to. But something inside me had shifted. I was finally giving myself permission to live the way I had always wanted to. I'd see Ethan sometimes, at coffee shops, in the streets, on days when I needed a reminder that I wasn't invisible. He never rushed me, never pushed me into anything. He simply showed up. We'd sit together, talk about everything and nothing, and for the first time in my life, I felt heard. But even then, I was hesitant. Could I really move on from the life I knew? Could I allow myself to fall for someone who wasn't a part of my old world? One afternoon, I met Ethan in a park, sitting under a tree with a book in his hand. He looked up when he saw me, that same familiar smile that always made my heart skip a beat. This time, though, I wasn't afraid. "Hey," he said softly, standing up. "Hey," I replied, heart racing. "I've been thinking a lot about everything." Ethan nodded, stepping closer. "And?" "I think I'm ready. I think I'm ready to be loved the right way. Not out of habit, not because it's convenient, but because I deserve it." His smile grew warmer, more genuine, as he gently took my hand. "You do?" he whispered. I didn't know what the future held, but in that moment, it didn't matter, because I had taken control of my own happiness. I had learned that sometimes the hardest thing is walking away from what's familiar, but it's also the only way to find what's meant for you. With Ethan by my side, I was no longer afraid, no longer hiding in someone else's shadow. I was me, and that was enough. The forgotten love of my past had led me to the love I was meant to find. And now, I was ready to embrace it with all my heart. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Explored Vibes for more emotional stories that stay with you. Turn on notifications so you never miss a vibe.